Firstly, the Chief Executive of the Trust, which has introduced the No Outsiders lesson, saying we're not teaching children, for instance, about same-sex couples in the sense of sexual relationships. All they're doing is teaching there are different families. There may be children at these schools who have two mums or two dads, and it is simply about explaining that doesn't make them outsiders. We need to accept that. What is your issue with that?
I think it's not just an issue of same-sex relations, but it's just any type of sexual relations and sexual labels and gender identity and these kind of things which are being exposed to children at this young age.
But children know they've got, for instance, a mum and a dad.
Yes.
So, and that's not sexualising children. So why not teach that some children have a mum and a mum, or a dad and a dad, or perhaps just one mum and no dad, or vice versa?
I think the reason why parents have resorted to petitions and protests and withdrawals in Birmingham is that there was a breakdown in communication, a lack of consultation.
Is homosexuality, in your view,
a sin?
Yeah, according to the standpoint of my faith, yes. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't coexist in peace with people of different sexual
Well, but you're not coexisting in peace. You're making very vocal protests and taking kids out of schools. And I think it's driven not so much for the reasons that you say, but it's driven by homophobia.
No,
right?
I know.
Which is not actually that peaceful. It's actually an aggressive act.
I think that's unequivocally untrue, Piers. But the reason why that is because the sentiments of the parents in Birmingham has essentially been the lack of consultation, the lack of transparency and the lack of communication from the school.
If the Trust had communicated with those parents, perhaps who think homosexuality is a sin, what would those parents have done? Withdraw their children from those classes?
I mean, hypothetically speaking, I can't really make a comment about the issue, the crux of the issue.
What would you do? What
would I do? I mean, there'd have to be, as someone who's not a parent, but an uncle to 12 nephews and nieces, engagement and dialogue is always the first
But what would you do if you knew that the school was teaching children, as you say, your nieces and nephews perhaps, that some children of that age have gay parents? What would you do in that case?
My personal view is that the sexualisation of children and the exposure to any kind of sexual
They're
relationship...
not talking about sex, are they? They're talking about the relationship.
It is, because you're subscribing to certain sexual identities.
Schools have got a job to prepare young people from the earliest age to go out into modern Britain and cope in modern Britain and meet people who are different to them, and above all to teach tolerance. And I've heard the argument that this shouldn't happen in primary schools. Well, as a teacher of long experience and have been into many primary schools, you see children who are gay being bullied, and you hear that word gay being used in a pejorative way to bully others in school.
What age do kids go to mosques in this country?
I don't think there's a fixed age. I think children as young as 6, 7 or 8.
Right, so you're happy for them to go to mosques and hear teachings, which may include views about homosexuality in a mosque, but you're not happy for them to have it at school?
I mean, parents have the right to withdraw their children from mosques and madrasas if they feel
But my point is you're happy for them to hear it in a mosque, but you're not happy... And it would be a very negative, homophobic view.
Not necessarily.
It would be.
No,
There's no mosque in this country that's preaching tolerance or fairness about homosexuality, right?
I don't think that can be substantiated and be equated to homophobia.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, what's being taught...
Do mosques in this country, Muslim mosques in this country, do they teach the virtues of homosexuality?
Mosques and madrasas teach what is enshrined within Scripture, and that is that marriage is a sanctimonious relationship and the only one that's correct, according to the Islamic standpoint.
Between a man and a woman?
Between a man and a woman, in the sanctity of marriage.
One of the bedrocks of being a Muslim, in terms of faith, is that...
As well as other faiths. I mean, let's not single out the Muslim
I get it. I'm not saying that.
Christians may feel the same way, absolutely.
And Jewish communities
I get it, but this whole thing of homosexuality being a sin, marriage between a man and a woman and so on, that does not reflect the more liberal way that this country has become.
But why is that...
And nor is it viewed as tolerant.
But why is that being conflated with an inability to coexist? Why is that being conflated?
You tell me, because it's these parents that are outside taking their kids out, shouting and screaming about it. And
when
I'm
the
saying to you, I fear that underpinning it is basically homophobia.
The parents have consistently maintained that they have no issues with the Equalities Act, upon which the No Outsiders policy is based upon. But we forget that the Equalities Act 2010 stipulates 9 protected characteristics, one of which is religion and religious belief.
So, Sir Michael Wilshaw, I mean, this is where there is a conflict, isn't there? Because we want to live in a liberal society where we respect people's different opinions, but we also need to respect people's different faiths. And if that faith thinks that something is intolerable, how do we accommodate that?
Well, the same would apply to the Jewish faith, to Christians, to Catholics in a Catholic school.
It's just
I was head
out,
of a Catholic school at one time. I would not have done what these parents are demanding that I do, not teach about tolerance and equality of people who have different views to my own. And that's the issue. And these parents are being whipped up, I'm absolutely sure, because I've worked in Birmingham on the Trojan Horse affair some years ago. They're being whipped up by a small group of radicals who are determined to get their way. And it's up to the school and the schools involved and the Department of Education and the local authority to stand up against these parents.
Let's take religion out of it. Children as young as 5, learning about different relationships. Some parents, regardless of religion, might actually think, I just think it's too young. I just think it's too young for, for these children to even be thinking about that. You know, it's absolutely fair enough that some people have gay parents, some people have single parents, some people are in care. Yeah. It's absolutely fair enough. But I just want my child to go along and play in the playground and learn something.
OK, that's up to the school to make that decision as to what age they start teaching relationship education. It's not sex education, it's relationships education, and it's going to be on the statute book from next year, and all primary schools are going to have to get involved in this. It's really up to the school to decide how and when they do it, and whether the materials are right.
If you're a young gay person at school in this country, and you have as a leading spokesman for the Muslim community sitting here on national television saying homosexuality is sinful, marriage is between a man and woman, and all the rest of it, actually, if you are a young gay person, you're thinking, wow, this guy hates me.
But if a gay person does not subscribe to these theological and religious views, and I don't understand why it would necessarily be harmful. Why is there conflation between a disagreement in philosophical, moral and religious views and an inability to live and coexist in peace? We do it in every other facet of life and society.
Do you agree with that?
No. I just want to echo something else that Sir Wilshaw did say in his BBC Radio 4 interview, and that is that whilst he believes that it should be imposed, that there still needs to be a level of consultation with parents, and that's something which the parents in Birmingham who are protesting have said.
But could you imagine any scenario where any Muslim parent involved in these protests is ever going to allow any discussion about anything that's pro-homosexuality or gay relationships in school?
Well, according to the parents in Birmingham, the ones that we have been interacting with, they've said that it's not necessarily, with regards to the No Outsiders programme, it's not being taught as an alternative relationship, it's been proselytised. For example, I just want to quickly give this example.
What, you mean that teachers are advocating that you should be gay?
So what does that mean?
But that's not...
That's not the case.
What children have said to their parents is as such that when a proposition has been portrayed where there's 2 dads or 2 mums, that when children have conveyed that, this is something wrong or something that's, we've been taught to be incorrect, that they were actually, that people who espouse these views are considered as an outsider of the No Outsiders policy.
Well, yeah. That's right.
Yeah,
but that's right.
So therefore, the Equalities Act of 2010...
But again, I come back to my comment about Islamabad was not to be inflammatory, it's to be realistic. Let me explain to you what I meant. Yeah. And actually, it was a line I took from the briefing notes from Sir Michael. Yes. And it's this, is that in Islamabad, none of this would be remotely controversial because every parent at every school they'd all be signing up to...
But we're not dealing with people in Islamabad, Piers. We're dealing with British citizens.
I get it.
We're dealing with British citizens.
I get it, but you keep talking about how tolerant you are and how inclusive you want to be, and yet your faith, as you've already laid out, is, to many people, encouraging homophobia. These kids that are going to school, you say, are hearing, you're wrong. Well, yeah, most people in this country think that homophobia is wrong.
Well, what do you expect?
But they're being taught homophobia, right?
That's not true.
No?
No,
So mosques in this country
because there is a conflation.
Don't say that homosexuality is a sin. It's homophobia.
Okay, no, that's not homophobia. No, it's a theological and religious standpoint.
So saying that something is sinful and wrong and shouldn't be happening is not homophobic?
Of course not. Because it's not inciting violence or hatred.
Isn't it?
No.
Isn't it inciting people to think these people are bad, wrong people?
No, so
really? You said it with a straight face?
Yeah, absolutely. Do we not live in a society where we ardently disagree on so many major issues about man, life and universe? Do we not? Does that necessarily mean that we hate the people that we disagree with? Of course not.
Sir Michael.
Well, these parents have behaved disgracefully. As I say, I think they've probably been whipped up into a fury by others. I do hope that the head teachers reinstate the curriculum. I do hope that they're properly supported by the Department of Education and by the local authority and by these new regional schools commissioners. If they're not, they'll be picked off and isolated and being put under unfair pressure. And this will spread elsewhere, as I believe it already is in other cities across the country.